Sienna Novak didn't believe in fate until the day her lunch came with a side of blue eyes and a shy smile. She'd been ordering takeout from the same tiny Mediterranean place down the block for weeks. Not because she was obsessed with hummus, or because she couldn't afford to cook. Sienna was a millionaire. After all, but because she couldn't stand the silence in her penthouse anymore. The echo of her own footsteps in her designer kitchen made her feel lonelier than she liked to admit. So, she filled the void with warm food and the briefest connection to the outside world. But today, when she opened her door on the 25th floor of the glass high-rise, it wasn't the usual delivery guy holding her lunch. It was someone new. He had one hand on the bag and the other balancing a little girl against his hip. His clothes were clean but worn, and his hair stuck up in a few places like he'd been running his hands through it all morning. But it was his eyes, clear, ocean blue, tired but kind, that made her pause. "Sorry," he said, breathless. "I'm filling in for my brother. Hope that's okay." Sienna blinked. "Yeah, it's fine." The little girl, maybe 5 or 6, peeked at her from behind his shoulder and whispered something. He smiled down at her. "She likes your earrings," he said, eyes flicking to the small diamond studs on Sienna's ears. "Oh," Sienna touched them, a little disarmed. "Thanks." He handed her the bag. "Chicken shawarma with extra garlic sauce, right?" She nodded, still staring. "You memorized my order." He gave a small, sheepish laugh. "I've been doing the deliveries for a few days now. Figured I should get it right." Sienna shifted her weight. What happened to the usual guy? "My brother had to pick up extra shifts at the mechanic shop," he said. "So, took over deliveries. Name's York. This is my daughter, Madelyn." Madelyn gave a tiny wave. "Hi." Sienna smiled, then caught herself. "Hi, Madelyn." "Anyway," York said, adjusting his grip on the girl, "I won't keep you. Have a good day." "Wait," she said, surprising herself. "How old is she?" He hesitated, clearly caught off guard. 6, just started first grade. Sienna glanced at the girl's plastic pink unicorn backpack and the glitter on her sneakers. Cute shoes. Madelyn beamed. After they left, Sienna stared at her takeout bag for a full minute before eating. She didn't know why that tiny interaction had stuck in her chest like a pin, but it had. The next day, she ordered from the same place again. And the day after that. And the next. Every time, York showed up. Sometimes with Madelyn, sometimes without. He was always polite, always a little rushed, but he started to smile more. And Sienna, who built a tech company from scratch, who negotiated multi-million-dollar deals before lunch, found herself waiting by the door 5 minutes early and brushing her hair like a teenager before prom. "You really like this place, huh?" York asked by the 6th day. Sienna leaned against the doorframe. "It's the garlic sauce." He grinned, and God, she noticed the little dimple that showed up when he did. "You ever eat there in person? It's not much, but the food's better fresh." "I don't really do that," she said. "Do what?" "Eat in places." "Places?" he echoed, amused. She crossed her arms. "Public places." "Why not?" She hesitated. "I just don't." He didn't press, just nodded. "Fair enough." But the next time he came, he brought an extra box. She gave him a look. "I didn't order 2. He shrugged. "You didn't. I had leftovers. Figured you might want to try something different." She opened the container and inhaled. "That smells amazing." "Family recipe," he said. "My mom used to make it." Sienna stared at it, then back at him. "You didn't have to." "Didn't cost me anything but time." That night, she ate the food slowly. It tasted like warmth, like something she didn't know she was missing. The next time he came, she invited him in. Just for a minute, she told herself, just to say thank you. Madelyn was with him that day. and when she saw the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, her mouth dropped open. "Whoa," she whispered, "you can see the whole world." York looked uneasy. "Madelyn, don't touch anything." Sienna waved him off. "It's fine, she's adorable." Madelyn ran to the window and pressed her palms to the glass. "Do you live in the sky?" Sienna laughed, "Something like that." York stood awkwardly in the doorway, hands still holding the takeout bag. "You sure this is okay?" "Yes," Sienna said, more firmly than she meant to. "It's okay." He stepped in, looking around the polished marble floors, the designer furniture, the art on the walls. "You live here alone?" he asked. She nodded. "Damn." Sienna raised an eyebrow. "That a compliment or an insult?" "Definitely a compliment," he said. "I've just never delivered to a place like this." "It's not that impressive." He looked at her. "It kind of is." Their eyes met, and something shifted. He wasn't just the guy bringing her lunch anymore, and she wasn't just a lonely woman in a glass tower. That night, she sat on the couch long after they left, staring at the container he'd brought her. He'd written her name on it, not just Sienna, but Sienna. She didn't know what to do with that tiny, smiley face, but it made her feel something. So the next day, she didn't just order lunch. She ordered dinner too. Sienna stood at the corner of her open-concept kitchen, watching the wine pour into the glass like it had somewhere else to be. She usually didn't drink during the week, but tonight was different. Tonight, she'd invited a man who was not a client, not a colleague, not a threat into her home for the second time. And this time, she'd asked him to stay for dinner. York arrived 10 minutes late, breathless, with Madelyn bouncing beside him holding a small paper bag. "She wanted to bring dessert," he said, pushing a curl off her forehead. "It's just cookies, nothing fancy." Sienna took the bag with both hands, her voice softer than she intended. "They smell incredible." "She helped make them," he added, nudging the little girl gently. Madelyn puffed out her chest. "Crack the eggs." Sienna crouched down to her level. "You must be very strong." "Cam," Madelyn said, "wanna see my cartwheel?" York rubbed the back of his neck. "Maybe later, Mads. Let's not break anything worth more than my truck." They stepped inside, and this time, neither hesitated. Sienna had set the table with linen napkins and flickering white candles, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because it made the room feel less like a showroom and more like a place where people actually lived. Madelyn ran straight to the window again, this time pressing her nose to the glass. "It looks like a toy city." York stepped closer to the table, eyes scanning the settings. "You didn't have to go all out." "I didn't," Sienna replied. "This is just what I do." He nodded slowly, like he understood more than she said. Dinner was quiet at first. Sienna had cooked a simple pasta with lemon and capers, but she kept glancing at York, wondering if he noticed that she hadn't overcooked the noodles or that she'd used real Parmesan, not the kind from a can. Madelyn, oblivious to the tension, filled the silence with a story about a pirate-themed day at school. "She made me wear an eye patch," York said once she was done, shaking his head. "I nearly walked into a street lamp." Sienna laughed, genuinely, the sound bouncing off the high ceilings. "You actually wore it." "She bribed me with a sticker chart," he said. "You ever try negotiating with a 6-year-old? It's like dealing with a tiny mob boss." Madelyn beamed. "I'm good at deals." Sienna looked at her. "I believe it." After dinner, Sienna brought out the cookies. They were slightly misshapen, with sprinkles clinging to places sprinkles didn't usually go, but she bit into one and closed her eyes. "This is the best dessert I've had in months." Madelyn lit up. "Even better than cake." "Way better." York leaned back in his chair, his posture finally relaxing. "She's going to demand a bakery now." Do it, Sienna said. She's got talent. He smiled, not the cautious kind he wore when he first met her, but something looser, warmer. You ever think about having kids? Sienna blinked, caught off guard. That's a bold question. Sorry, he said quickly. You're good with her. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting her, Sienna admitted. Or you. He tilted his head. What were you expecting? She hesitated, then said, I don't know, but it wasn't this. Madelyn had moved to the living room, curled up on the couch with a blanket Sienna had placed there earlier. Her eyelids were drooping. York looked over his shoulder. She's out. She can stay the night, Sienna said before she could stop herself. York turned back to her, his brows lifting. You serious? I have a guest room, she said. Clean sheets, and she's already asleep. He studied her, not like someone looking at a stranger, but like someone trying to decide if they were allowed to trust what they saw. You're not what I expected either, he said finally. Sienna crossed her arms. What did you expect? He took a slow breath. Someone who lives in a place like this thought you'd be cold, untouchable, maybe a little bored with real life. She raised an eyebrow, and now? Now I think you're just, he trailed off, scratching his jaw, lonely like me. Her stomach twisted, not because he was wrong, but because he'd said it out loud. I'm not trying to fix you, he added. I just like talking to you. Sienna leaned against the counter. It's been a long time since someone said something like that to me. Too long, he said. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He turned to look at Madelyn again. I should probably move her. Sienna stepped forward. Let me help. They carried her together, York lifting her gently while Sienna pulled back the covers in the guest room. Once she was tucked in and the lights were dimmed, they stood in the hallway, too close and too quiet. She'll be up early, York murmured. She's like a rooster with glitter. Good, Sienna whispered back. I like mornings. He searched her face, something unreadable in his expression. This doesn't have to mean anything, you know. She looked up at him, but what if it already does? He didn't answer. He just reached up and brushed a piece of hair behind her ear, his fingers grazing her cheekbone. It was the softest touch she'd felt in years. She didn't pull away. That night, after he fell asleep on the couch, and Madelyn snored softly in the guest room, Sienna stood at the window, staring down at the city that no longer felt like a fortress. For the first time in ages, she wasn't alone. She didn't know what would happen next. But she wanted to find out. York didn't knock the next morning. The soft shuffle of feet on the marble floor woke Sienna before the sun had cleared the skyline. She sat up on the edge of her bed, heart thudding, listening. A small giggle echoed faintly from the hallway, followed by a hushed whisper. She found them in the kitchen. Madelyn stood on a stool, carefully placing strawberries around the edge of a plate while York tried and mostly failed to figure out her espresso machine. The sight was so startlingly domestic, so achingly gentle, that she had to lean against the doorway for a second before saying anything. When did you two become my breakfast team? York glanced over his shoulder, caught in the act of pouring hot milk into a mug that was definitely not meant for lattes. We didn't want to wake you. She insisted on making you something. Madelyn looked up proudly. It's toast with strawberries and honey, like flowers. Sienna walked in barefoot, still in the silk pajama set she rarely wore for anyone but herself. It's beautiful. York handed her the mug. I think I did this right. It might be all foam. She took a sip. Somehow, still better than what the cafe downstairs makes. He grinned, low bars. Madelyn tugged at his shirt. Can we go to the park now? York looked at Sienna, unsure. She's got a thing for swings. I told her we'd find one this morning. There's one 5 blocks up, Sienna said. It's clean, usually quiet. You want to come? She hesitated. I don't exactly blend in at neighborhood parks. She doesn't care, he said, nodding toward his daughter. All she needs is someone to push her. Sienna looked at Madelyn, who was already zipping up her unicorn jacket. All right, let me get dressed. She threw on jeans and a long coat, skipping her usual makeup. They walked the blocks together, York carrying a paper bag with leftover cookies and Madelyn skipping ahead, narrating their journey like it was an expedition through a jungle. At the park, Sienna sat on the edge of a bench while York gently pushed Madelyn on the swing. His hands were steady, his voice low and patient. She tilted back and laughed, each rise closer to the sky drawing more joy from her than Sienna had seen in years. She doesn't miss her mother, Sienna asked quietly when Madelyn leapt off and ran toward the slide. York's smile faded. She was never really around, left when Madelyn was 2. Last we heard, she moved to Florida with some guy who sold timeshares. She doesn't ask about her. Sometimes, but not like you'd expect. I think she's figured out there's no point hoping for someone who never wanted to stay. Sienna's fingers curled around the edge of the bench. She's lucky to have you. I'm not perfect. You're showing up, that counts for a lot. He looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. What about your parents? Both gone, she said. Years ago, plane crash, private jet, turbulence, all that. I was at a conference in Tokyo when I found out. York didn't say anything right away. Then, softly, that's brutal. I handled it the only way I knew how, built things. He nodded slowly. That's why everything's so polished with you. You turned grief into control. Sienna blinked, caught off guard. That's not wrong. Madelyn came running back, cheeks flushed. Can we get ice cream? It's not even noon, York said. She planted her hands on her hips. You said weekends have no rules. York looked at Sienna. She's right, I did say that. There's a place around the corner, Sienna offered. I've never been inside, but the line's always out the door. York lifted a brow. You sure you're okay waiting in line? She stood, let's find out. They walked the block and waited 20 minutes in the crisp air. Sienna bought 3 cones, 1 vanilla, 1 mint chip, and 1 with rainbow sprinkles that Madelyn declared the best thing in the universe. They sat on the curb outside the shop, the city humming around them like a distant melody. York turned toward her as he licked his cone. You ever do this before? Sit on a curb eating ice cream with a 6-year-old and a man I barely know. He laughed, guess not. No, she said more quietly, I haven't. Do you like it? She watched Madelyn try to catch a drip before it hit her jacket. More than I thought I would. By the time they walked back to her building, the sun was high. York glanced at his watch. I've got to drop her at my sister's for the afternoon. She's helping me with pickup since I'm filling in for my brother again tonight. Sienna's chest tightened. You're working tonight. Yeah, late shift. She hesitated. You could do something else, you know. He looked at her, like what? I could hire you. His expression stilled. Doing what exactly? I don't know yet, she said, but I could use someone I trust. Someone who doesn't care what shoes I'm wearing or what the stock market's doing. He crossed his arms. You offering me a job because you want to help or because you don't want me leaving at night? Both. He didn't answer, not right away. Then. I appreciate it, really, but I don't want to be a project. You're not, she said. I want to keep seeing you. York studied her. That sounds dangerously close to a relationship. She lifted her chin. Would that be so bad? He stepped forward until there was only a breath between them. Not if it's real. Sienna's voice was barely above a whisper. It is. He nodded slowly, like he was absorbing it piece by piece. Then he leaned in and kissed her, nothing rushed, nothing hungry, just warm, certain, and impossibly steady. When they pulled apart, Madelyn clapped. "You're supposed to kiss at the end of the movie," she said. "We're not at the end," York said. Sienna reached for his hand, not even close. York stood on the far side of the rooftop garden, watching the city glitter below like it had no idea how hard it had been to get here. The invitation had arrived that morning, an embossed envelope tucked into the paper bag she handed him at the door. Inside, a card with his name in her handwriting. "Come tonight, formal attire, bring Madelyn." He hadn't known what to expect. Not really. But what he found was a rooftop draped in soft lights, one long table set for 3, and Sienna standing at the edge in a navy dress that caught the wind like it had been born from it, not stitched. "You didn't have to do all this," he said as he approached, Madelyn clinging to his hand in her cotton dress and shiny shoes. Sienna turned, her expression unreadable at first. Then she smiled, not the careful kind he'd seen when they first met, but something weightier. Braver. "I wanted to," she said, "for both of you." Madelyn gasped when she saw the table. "It's like a wedding." York laughed. "Let's not scare her off, kid." Sienna crouched. "You're the guest of honor tonight." "Why?" Madelyn asked. "Because you brought me your dad," Sienna said. Madelyn considered that. "I guess that's fair." They ate under the stars. Real food plates that didn't come in takeout containers, cutlery that gleamed in the candlelight. York had never seen his daughter handle a linen napkin so seriously. Halfway through the meal, Sienna set her glass down and looked directly at him. "I want to talk to you about something." His stomach tensed. "Is this the part where you tell me it's been fun, but—" "No," she cut in. "This is the part where I tell you I've made space for you, for both of you, if you want it." He didn't speak right away. The wind tugged gently at the tablecloth. Madelyn was focused on her dessert, oblivious to the shift in the air. "What does that mean?" he asked finally. "It means I cleared out the guest room," she said. "Made it into a real bedroom, with shelves for her books and a closet that doesn't echo." York's chest tightened. "Sienna." She held up a hand. "Let me finish." He nodded. "It also means I've stepped back from the board. I'm still running things, but not like before. Hired someone to manage the day-to-day. I don't need to lock myself in that office anymore." He leaned forward. "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't want to miss this," she said. "I don't want to miss a single thing with you." Madelyn looked up, eyes wide. "Are we moving in?" York took a slow breath. "That's a big question." Sienna reached across the table. "There's no pressure. I just wanted you to know the door's open. Always." He looked at her hand, then he took it. "I've been trying to figure out how I fit into your world," he said. "But maybe the answer isn't about fitting in. Maybe it's about building something new." Sienna's voice softened. "Together." He nodded. Madelyn clapped her hands. "Can I pick the paint color for my room?" Sienna grinned. "Only if it's not glitter." "Deal," she said, then paused. "Okay, maybe a little glitter." They stayed on the rooftop long after dessert. Later, after York carried his sleeping daughter inside and tucked her into the new room complete with a small bookshelf already half filled, he found Sienna on the couch, barefoot now, hair down. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. "I've never been more sure of anything." "I don't come with just joy," he said. "There's struggle, bills, exhaustion, chaos." "I don't need easy," she said. "I just need real." He crossed the room slowly, then sat beside her. "You're not the woman I expected when I walked into that building." She leaned into him. And you're not the man I thought was waiting for. He brushed her hair back, kissed her temple. I don't want to leave tonight. Then don't. He stayed. In the weeks that followed, the rhythms of their lives changed. Slowly at first. Madelyn's laughter filled the penthouse. York took a job managing logistics for one of Sienna's smaller charitable ventures, something flexible, something that gave him purpose without stealing him from her or his daughter. He was good at it, better than he thought he'd be. And Sienna, she learned to let go, bit by bit. She stopped checking market alerts at midnight. She let the quiet into her life and found that it didn't scare her anymore. One Saturday morning, Madelyn burst into their bedroom wearing a paper crown and declared it Family Adventure Day. Sienna blinked awake. What does that mean? It means, Madelyn said, climbing onto the bed, we go somewhere weird and do something fun. York stretched. That sounds like a rule. It is. They ended up in a sunflower field 2 hours outside the city, chasing butterflies and eating sandwiches on a blanket. Sienna laughed until her stomach hurt when York tried to juggle apples and failed miserably. That night, back in the city, Sienna pulled him onto the balcony while Madelyn slept. I used to think I built this life for safety, she said, watching the skyline. But maybe I was just building it for you to find me. He wrapped his arms around her. Took me a while, sorry about the garlic sauce. She laughed against his chest. Best thing ever ordered. He turned her gently, lifting her chin. I love you. She didn't hesitate. I love you too. And with the city behind them, the past tucked away, and the future wide open, they kissed. Not because they were trying to seal a moment, but because they were already living it. York adjusted the collar of his jacket, glancing at his reflection in the glass doors of the penthouse terrace. Inside, warm light spilled across the marble floors, and the low murmur of voices drifted from the dining room where close friends and a few of Sienna's longtime colleagues gathered. The evening was meant to celebrate the launch of her new initiative, a nonprofit tech fund that would support single parents in underserved communities. But York knew it was more than that. It was a quiet deck. Stop fidgeting, Sienna said, stepping behind him. She reached up to fix his collar herself, fingers lingering just a second longer than necessary. You look good. So do you, he replied, eyes sweeping over the green silk dress that fit her like it had been sewn there. Though I'm starting to think you're trying to make everyone else feel underdressed. It's a talent, she murmured, then leaned in and kissed his cheek. Come on, everyone's waiting. As they rejoined the group, York noticed how comfortable she looked among people now. Not guarded, not posturing, just present. He caught her laughing with one of the board members, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and the sight settled something in his chest. Madelyn was seated at the far end of the room beside Sienna's assistant, coloring a cardboard model of a robot. She had insisted on wearing a blazer over her dress to look like a boss, and had spent the afternoon rehearsing what she'd say if someone asked her about the tech startup she planned to create. York had no doubt she'd have one by the time she turned 8. After the speeches wrapped up and the guests began to trickle out, Sienna stood near the fireplace, sipping a glass of champagne. The last few months had changed her. Not in the flashy way people assumed change looked like, but in the quiet softening of someone who'd finally let go of the weight they weren't meant to carry alone. You didn't have to stand up there and give me half the credit, York said as he joined her, sliding a hand around her waist. You earned it, she replied, her voice low. Every time you stayed up late helping me sort through applications, every time you reminded me that this wasn't about legacy, it was about impact. He traced his thumb along her hip. You used to run in a different circle. I used to think that circle was the only one that mattered. And now I know better. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the lights of the city flicker like stars had fallen and landed among the buildings. "I've been thinking," she said, turning in his arms. "Dangerous," he teased. She rolled her eyes, but her expression sobered. "I want to buy a house." York blinked. A house. Somewhere with a yard. A real kitchen that doesn't echo, maybe even a creaky stair or two. He studied her face. "You'd really leave all this behind?" "I'm not leaving anything behind," she said. "I'm moving forward with you, with her. I don't need the view if it means I'm always looking down on everything else." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "What about your company?" "I'll still run it, just not from a glass tower. I've already started the transition. Lena's taking over more responsibilities. I'll stay on the board, but I want my energy somewhere else now." York nodded slowly. "You sure?" She looked over at Madelyn, who had fallen asleep in her chair, colored markers scattered like confetti around her. "Completely." They stayed like that until the last guest left and the apartment finally quieted. York carried Madelyn to the guest room, now transformed into the kind of space a little girl could grow and glow in the dark stars on the ceiling, books on every shelf, a closet filled with sparkly dresses and muddy sneakers. Later, Sienna curled into York on the couch, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her back. "I have something for you," she said, sitting up and reaching beneath one of the cushions. York raised an eyebrow. "You hid it in the couch." "Creative storage," she said, handing him a small box wrapped in matte black paper. He opened it slowly, lifting the lid to reveal a single key on a silver chain. "I had them make a copy," she said, "for the house, when we find it." York exhaled, the weight of the gesture settling over him like a warm blanket. "You're really all in, huh?" "I was the moment you brought her cookies," she whispered. He leaned in and kissed her, not because it was expected, not because it was the romantic thing to do, but because every time their lips met, it felt like they were starting something new. The weeks that followed were a blur of house tours, school visits, and late night planning over takeout containers and wine. They found the house on a rainy Tuesday, a 2-story craftsman with a wraparound porch, a garden that needed some love, and a kitchen that felt like it had been waiting for them. They moved in by mid-spring. York built Madelyn a treehouse with his own hands, and Sienna planted wildflowers along the fence. The neighbors brought casseroles and curiosity, and over time, even the nosiest among them stopped wondering how a former delivery guy and a tech entrepreneur ended up building something real. One summer evening, as the sky bruised into shades of lavender and gold, York found Sienna standing barefoot in the grass, watching Madelyn chase fireflies. "Not bad for a girl who didn't do parks," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Not bad for a guy who didn't do penthouses," she replied. He rested his chin on her shoulder. "Think she knows how lucky we are?" "She will," Sienna said, turning to face him, "because we'll show her, every day." They kissed beneath the rising moon, fireflies blinking like fairy lights all around them, and for the first time in both their lives, there was nothing missing. No more echoes in empty rooms. No more meals eaten alone. Just a home, a family, and a love built not through grand declarations, but through every ordinary, extraordinary moment they chose each other again and again. And they always would.